Character creation has always been something that HOYOVERSE is known for. Whether it's creating kits, characters, or writing lore, you could say that HOYOVERSE is well known for this part of their lore craft and creation. One thing that is consistently brought up is the idea of EXPYs. I love the idea of EXPYs, of a character that is just so iconic that a game company just had to do it again. We've seen this with Kuro games as well, with XPing characters from games like Punishing Grey Raven and slapping them into Wuthering Waves. I'm onto you, Kuro, about Amenth. I want to make it clear that some of these that we're going to talk about today are considered to be confirmed, while others are speculation. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about how to identify an XP, and I wanted to make something that talked about XPs because it's kind of like something I kind of really enjoy talking about. I want to talk about them, what they are, and how to actually identify them, because interestingly enough, an XP isn't just because ABC looks like someone. So to be clear, I'm not HOYOVERSE, nor am I pretending to be, whether they're team, developers, etc. If they like me though, I'm totally about them adding me on for voice work. Wink wink, nudge nudge, Dawe. Hey bud. The things I have to say are simply my thoughts and ideas and are not the final opinion or say. Copyright laws state that notwithstanding the provisions of Section 106 and 106A, the fair use of a copyrighted work, including such use by reproduction and copies or phono records, basically, essentially, I can show anything here because it's free for me to do, and protected by federal law. So if you have any specific concerns about this video or position in the fair use defense, please contact us in the email address in the about so we can discuss this amicably. Thanks. Or if you want to hire me for voice work, Hoyo. Hey. For the viewer, I would recommend getting a snack, a blanket, and taking a seat. I also want to note, I will not be touching Gun Girl Z or Honkai Gakuen. I'm not familiar with them. I'm not going to pretend to be familiar with them. I'm going to only talk about the things I'm familiar with, which is anything Honkai Impact on. So I'm only going to be talking about games that I'm actually invested time into. So I know there's plenty of characters that first appeared in Gun Girl Z or Honkai Gakuen. I'm not talking about them. So I don't want to see it in the comments, well, this person was in Honkai Gakuen or this person was in Gun Girl Z. I'm not talking about Gun Girl Z. If you want to see something about Gun Girl Z, I'm not the person. Okay? So let's get into it now. This is going to be a bunch. So, first of all, what are XPs? XP is a term used by the fandom to describe what is known as a reused character among the HOYOVERSE fans. Many fans talk about this being more of a simplistic term. It is exactly what it is. It is a character model reused and created into something else. However, sometimes these XPs will be the same character in different lines of the multiverse of Hoyo, because despite what Shaoji will tell you, everything is clearly connected. I'm on to you, I'm in your walls, Teacup. When it comes to their stories, many times they will vary or they'll be similar. Some characters will even have gender changes depending on the character. Another way that XPs can be identified is many times the voice acting community for each character is the same. So, for example, the same character, Marina Inoue, voices both Elysia and Cyrene in Honkai Impact 3rd and Honkai Star Rail. We haven't seen this in the English voice community yet because I don't know. I'm not really sure. So many times this turns out to be something that's found by looking through the other dub communities. So I may have missed stuff. So let's go over what an XP can be. It can be literally anyone. It can be someone that looks like the character. It can be somebody who has a similar vibe or has the exact same story, as you will see. So knowing that, let's look at some of the XPs that are examples. So let's talk about confirmed XPs. Welt Yang. Now, the only reason that Welt is here because anyone who is a longtime fan is going to know Welt is not an XP. However, if you did not read the Honkai Impact Manga, you're going to think he's an XP. The only reason I'm mentioning Welt on this list is because he has shown up in more than one game, but he is confirmed to be the same character from his original game. However, you wouldn't exactly know this unless you read the Honkai Impact 3rd webcomic. Welt Yang is the sovereign of anti-entropy and the Herrscher of humanity, or Herrscher of reason. A person who was gifted a Herrscher core from his predecessor, Welt Joyce. Walt's real name is Joachim Nokian Vertanen, mouthful, and took the name Walt Yang when Joyce gave him the core. Walt left the universe he was in with his companion, Void Archives, which we'll talk about later, and headed into the universe that is Honkai Star Rail from the Honkai Impact 3rd universe. He is being mentioned here simply because many people have mistaken him for an EXPY, and had you not read the webtoon, it's kind of a slightly unknown piece of media unless you enjoy perusing webtoon, or literally look into him, because the amount of people I've seen who are not fans of Welt, are you okay? Just saying. Luocha, Otto Apocalypse, Void Archives. When it comes to Otto and Void and Luocha, it's very clear that if you play HSR and then played that part of the Xianzhou quest, you might have noticed Walt's alarm when he saw the picture of Luocha. When comparing Luocha, Otto, and Void Archives, the similarities are near striking. All three have long hair, green eyes, they're all blonde, though you could argue that they all have a very different way of thinking. Otto was obsessed with Colin Kaslana, in love with a girl who did not love him back and who he cloned due to his obsession. All my homies hate Otto Apocalypse, okay? He was willing to destroy everything and it meant he could have Colin to himself. And he was willing to take down the world for it. Void Archives is a clone of Otto and the first Divine Key, like the one that is currently in Walt's cane. He was created by Volvi in the previous era and is an antagonist. According to Volvi herself, Void scared the Moss so much that they had stopped her from completing the Divine Key of Corruption. Void has a certain amount of fascination with humanity, and assists Walt in going into the HSR universe to stop the Sky People. He himself has very morally gray ideas. This seems to also follow over to Luocha, who wants to use the contents of his coffin, the remains of Tazaronth, to perform the Godslayer protocol, and was able to convince Jinglu, who I would argue is not fully intact with her humanity, to join him. So, do I think that they're very similar? Yes. Yes. Su, Alhaitham, Vita, Sa, Anaxa, Dottore, Shengguang's brother? I'm going to include some things here with characters that aren't confirmed, because this area was the whole reason why I even made this video. Why I even wrote this up. I call it the Su dilemma. A couple of facts to note. Su does say, if you read the manga, again, this is another manga reference, Su did say he was aware of other EXPYs and copies of him in other universes, because he is psychically alive and in touch with all universes because of his connection to the imaginary tree. Su, known as the Flame Chaser of Bodhi, is a former scientist and member of Moth. He was a doctor who compassionately tried to heal others of the Honkai illness and was known for being very kind and serene. He didn't like fighting, and this was known within his Mantis companions that he would only fight if it was necessary. He believed that no one had the right to, quote-unquote, play God or decide humanity's fate. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. With that knowledge, then, you might say that which of these EXPYs could actually be Su? Vita or Sa is a confirmed EXPY. She's playful, alluring, expressive, and usually moving between good and bad. She is considered an enemy, but has been helpful to humanity, so she really can't be considered all bad. Perhaps morally gray? But knowing that she's an EXPY of Su, it makes you wonder a bit. Most people all align with the fact that Alhaitham is also an EXPY of Su. Other than his appearance, which matches Su with the gray hair and the green streaks, he is missing some elements such as the markings on his hands that Anaxa and Su share. While these all could be aspects of Su, which would make sense, some aspects do not. Shengguang's brother, I feel, is a reach. A lot of people have said just because he looks the same, that he is an EXPY of Anaxa, which would make him an EXPY of Su. We don't know much about him. Knowing how unhinged Vita is, it makes more sense that Anaxa, Dottore, and Alhaitham are EXPYs of the original Su. They're smart, driven, passionate about things. I would argue the only difference that would make Dottore not an EXPY would be how he wants to be godlike, but his wording, however, in the last quest, about how the powers never belong to the throne of heaven, also lines up, honestly, with Sue's ideals about how he didn't wish for humanity to play God. So it's something to keep in mind. He wants to let others decide. And perhaps that's also what the Tsaritsa believes as well. And this is not me defending Totore. Trust me, I hate the guy. When it comes to Sue XPs, the ones that are confirmed are Vita and Alhaitham, while the ones that are assumed are Anaxa and Shinguang's brother. But I personally believe that Totore is actually in that group. Rita and Noelle. Rita Roswise is from HI3 and is a Valkyrie and lieutenant of the Immortal Blades of Schicksal. She's known for the fact that she's Durandal's friend, but also that she's a maid. Like, literally, that's it. She's elegant, she's polite, she's helpful, and like any maid, she enjoys cleaning, cooking. Same thing goes for Noelle. She's known for being the maid of all maids. But the only difference with her is that while they do look similar, Noelle falls short when it comes to becoming a knight versus Rita, who is an extremely powerful Valkyrie. Wendy and Venti. Most of what people believe equates Wendy and Venti from what I've seen is that they look like mirror images of each other. Wendy is the current 4th Herrscher of the era and originally an A-rank Valkyrie. She ended up retiring when the Gem of Desire was implanted in her legs, which put her in a wheelchair. Like Venti, she has messy black hair, turquoise coloring, but Venti seems to have more of a tie to time than Wendy does. Okay. Yae Miko and Yae Sakura. Of course, I have to talk about my favorite girl, Guji Yae, and her XP-ness. I love Guji Yae, okay? Originally, Yae Miko is actually the XP of another member of the HOYOVERSE, a shrine priestess named Yae Sakura, from Honkai Impact 3rd. While Yae Miko is a kitsune, Sakura is not. There isn't much known about Yae Miko. She's a very suspicious character that doesn't really talk much about herself, despite overseeing the Grand Narukami Shrine and owning the Yae publishing house. She is Eternity servant and friend, Eternity being I, or A, which we'll talk about her in a moment. Yae Sakura was a head shrine priestess who lost her younger sister, who she was extremely devoted to, at her own hands, due to her father. Her younger sister Rin's dying wish was for Sakura to be a shrine maiden, and so she followed what her sister wished. Though when she met Kallen Kaslana, she found that she was feeling and hoping once more after so long. It was Kallen that Sakura fell in love with, and who Kallen fell in love with was Sakura, and unfortunately was forced by the black box that she had originally, which contained a Herrscher, to seal Sakura within. So when we say Otto never had a chance with Kallen, he never had a chance with Kallen. Regarding the fact that Yae is an XP of each other, it's pretty obvious if you only go with pink hair and vibes, but even the fact that they had lovers that they're dearest friends, Kallen and A, implied. Dr. May, Raiden May, A, Acheron, Void Hunter, Vike. You could argue that May seems to be a HOYOVERSE favorite character, which, with how much she's appeared in the Hoyo franchise, they really seem to love their Mays. May is an example of a character looking like, having the same name, similar story, and similar personality, to the point that I would even argue that all of them that we've met so far in the Honkai universe are just carbon copies of each other. Have one original thought challenge. They're all electric in element, they're all extremely powerful, they all have a more aloof but friendly personality. The only one we haven't met yet is Void Hunter Vike in ZZZ, who is not even confirmed to be alive. But it would make sense that this Void Hunter's connection to the Elysia XP that we're going to talk about later would be present, as Elysia and May were always very close. Sushang and Sushang. Sushang is one of those characters that is pretty much one-to-one of their XP. However, this Sushang in HSR does hold some differences, like the fact that she doesn't have a problematic man in HSR that she's utterly obsessed with. Yes, girl, I'm looking at you. Have some self-love. Oh my god. In HI3, Sushang is in love with Otto Apocalypse. And there's so many times where it's hinted at the possibility that Otto may favor her enough that that ship has sailed. If you think that's what's going on, please. He's not that hot to forget your morals and mess around with a blonde man, okay? Both of them mirror the fact that they're a bit clumsy and not very talented, but they do very well in swordsmanship. Seele Voller and Seele. One of the first characters in HSR that everyone seemed to catch on to being an EXPY was Seele. And they're not really wrong. In HI3, Seele was a secondary character, but one of the most memorable in the series. She was very close to Bronya and the bearer of the 6 Hershers stigma, and ends up becoming the Hersher of death/rebirth. A lot of HI3 Seele's story deals a lot with not knowing where she came from, but her continuation and her story within HI3 deals highly with sensitive topics that I won't fully go into. So Hoyo has been touching on very mature topics from the beginning. Seele in the HSR universe is a rebel and a member of Wildfire, which is a little bit different than Seele in HI3. While Seele is hot-headed and impulsive in HSR, Seele Voller in HI3 is known for being gentler and more reasonable. This is a prime example of an EXPY who is similar in appearance but not in personality, but has a similar backstory. Hua Lingsha. Something that's often brought up with Lingsha is that she is so similar to Hua or Noelle due to her appearance. Hua, who is known as the creator of the first currency and a member of Project Ember. She created along with her sister the elf to keep Hua company after they would die of old age. She and her sister ended up sacrificing themselves to seal Chiyo, a judgment class Honkai beast. Like Hua, Lingsha is a scientist of her own as a healer. In appearance, that's really the only match. Natasha. HI3 Natasha is a member of World Serpent, while Natasha of HSR is a member of Wildfire and actually the real leader. I mean, there's really not much to it. They look the same. They're both, leaders, but one of them is more hot-headed, the other one is less. Bronya Zaychik, Bronya, Silver Wolf, Haxor Bunny Skin, the Tsaritsa. Bronya is another one of those characters that seems to be Hoyo's favorite child. All the Bronya EXPYs share some sort of appearance similarly, except for, so far, as the current time of this video, the Tsaritsa. This in itself is a theory by most Genshin players that Bronya is the Tsaritsa, but we've yet to see this. Silverwolf and Bronya seem to have split a lot of Bronya Zaychik's personality, though we've yet to find out about the Tsaritsa. You could definitely say they're EXPYs, just in a different context. Cyrene, Elysia, Void Hunter, leader of the Falkenhayn mercenary group, Alice? One of the most obvious EXPYs ever are Elysia EXPYs. Usually very easy to find. They have pink hair, sharp personalities, embody the idea of love more than anybody else. Elysia being the first and the EXPY coming from that direction. Cyrene looks dead on like Elysia. And some people will put together that the Void Hunter leader of the Merc Troop looks just like Elysia as well. Despite how Hoyo has said that ZZZ is in a completely separate universe. Though to be fair, I don't trust HOYOVERSE at all after they said that Emphores wasn't a repeat of Elysian Realm. I deserve emotional damages for that. Some fans have tried to explain that Alice is an Elysia EXPY simply because she controls the narrative, has pointy ears, and wings. But I really think that's more of just Alice being Alice, and less Alex being an EXPY of Elysia. Not every character with originality has to be an EXPY of Elysia, guys. Come on. But like Elysia, every EXPY is extremely powerful, with the Void Hunter being a Void Hunter and Cyrene being an Emanator of Remembrance, so who's to say? Kevin, Finan, Phanes. If it weren't for the fact that Finan's true name is Kaslana, which, amazing originality, Hoyo, I would have more to stand on to say that Finan and Kevin are different people. However, it's very clear to me that Kevin and Finan are meant to be EXPYs, if not for the similar story. From Kevin being given the codename of Deliverance, to Finan being called the Deliverer, to the white hair, the blue eyes, the similar outfit choices, to both of them having more outgoing personalities until the horrors happen. One thing I do want to point out is that Finan seems to have more of a shippable ability and seems more open to relationships compared to Kevin, who had one woman his entire life. He said, I want Dr. May, and that's it. He followed her everywhere. He became a freaking recluse after May died. While Phanes was bitter when everybody died. So I would argue that's something different. My own thought, though, is that Phanes is actually also meant to be Phanes. Phanes, also known as the primordial one of the heavenly principles, is the progenitor god and antagonist who created humanity and rules Teyvat. Phanes is believed to be originally from another world, interestingly enough, and arrived during the Age of the Dragons. I mean, you literally look up Phanes, and most people all agree with that thought because the first image that comes up is Phanes Ultimate. So, Murata Himeko, Mavuika. The one that has been highly kept up with has been Murata Himeko. Himeko was a student in HI3 who ended up becoming one of the Valkyries of Schicksal, and unfortunately ended up having a death that was one of the most, if not the most, upsetting end for a beloved character in HI3. It's very much implied that Welt feels extreme guilt for the death of her father at his hands, and I would imagine somehow her death as well, as the reason he even goes into the HSR universe, is to keep Himeko from meeting the same fate. You could say that there is quite a connection between the two of them, whether out of guilt, of Welt genuinely enjoying Himeko's company in some way, as shown in the Himeko of Honkai Star Rail. Mavuika is more of a speculation, but considering that originally, apparently, her file name was Murata, it's more or less confirmed that Mavuika was supposed to be at least Himeko adjacent. Clearly, their personalities are similar despite the difference in the story, and they all look the same, or at least very similar. In this regard, Himeko is a great example of an EXPY. Now, these are going to be some less obvious EXPYs in speculation. I'm going to let you know when I talk about them, but I think that it's rather interesting, and if some are true, they do imply some really sad truths. Ma Yanqing and Yanqing. You might know Yanqing is the one that very clearly messes up your 50-50. Me. The person is me. But there is actually a Yanqing from HI3, and many fans have assumed for a long time the two Yanqings are EXPYs of each other. While the situation surrounding Yanqing and HI3 is rather odd, especially with this marriage situation, there is one thing that is brought up. Other than the fact that Ma Yanqing does look like an older version of the one we know in HSR, something that Ma Yanqing mentions is that he was forced to kill his mentor. Let that sink in for a minute. While we don't have any mention of General Jing Yuan in HI3, it leaves quite a bitter taste in your mouth, knowing the fate that may, in fact, be awaiting for our HSR Yanqing and our beloved General Jing Yuan. Jing Yuan not being present in HI3, and if HR Yanqing is in fact his EXPY, and knowing that the Mara is probably going to mess with Jing Yuan at any moment, let's just hope that Hoyo keeps our beloved general around just a bit longer. Kaveh Yaoshe. This is a relatively new one that I've seen, with most people just using the fact that Kaveh and Yaoshe have similar facial shapes and both are blonde to explain this theory. However, there were some people who I do agree with that had a different way to explain it. Yaoshe's whole deal is that they want to heal others and create life and keep people from death. Rebirth, revival, rejuvenation. All of those things sound familiar, don't they? When you look at Kaveh, who just wants to build and thinks of others way before himself, could it be possible that the most obvious connection to HSR and Genshin is that Kaveh actually ascended to Aeonhood? And perhaps that's why Teyvat no longer exists in the HSR universe? Many thoughts. But what do you think? Kiana, Asmodee, Void Hunter, Madame Sunbringer, Jibai. The one person that I think everyone would see in a moment, Kiana Kaslana. The clone from HI3, who is pretty much the main MC for the first part of the game, at least, and the main character who looks like a carbon copy of Callan. A lot of fans have started to think about her EXPYs, and many have brought up that Asmodee looks like Kiana's Herrscher of the Void form, expressing that Kiana must in fact be Asmodee, or the unknown god. Madame Sunbringer from ZZZ has also been brought up as being a Kiana EXPY. I've also thought myself about the possibility that Zibai might actually be a Kiana EXPY, but that is just because my thoughts about her being looking way too much like Kiana. But what do you think about Kiana's EXPYs? Now, the last two are just kind of my thoughts a little bit. Danhong and Cosma and Mighty and Calpus. And a lot of people could argue against Mighty and Calpus just because they're kind of different. Like, same, different. But Danhong and Cosma are both they're kind of both cold but kind, have dragony aspects, but there's not a lot to support that, but I wanted to mention them here because this has been brought up before. So that is it. I know that a lot of people wanted me to, were interested in me making a video about EXPY, so I hope that this helps. If you really like this video, you can subscribe to my channel. I'm going to try to do more videos like this. This is actually a lot of fun for me to write and do. So yeah, let me know what you thought. Let me know what you think. Who do you think is an EXPY? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.